Okay, so So I've actually changed the title for this, and I'm presenting it with two colleagues. So Anna Kral, who heads up the VR research lab at Griffith University, and then one of her PhD students, Min, who's going to start working on this area, so he was quite interested in doing the data collection for us. I have to specify that this type of work actually comes out of work that I do in kind of a healing space as a craniosacral therapist. So it kind of crosses over between my research work and then my other hat, which is a very, very different area where we work with trauma. And so it's quite fitting for sort of a Reef context around working with trauma. So before I start in the actual presentation, I actually like to acknowledge the land herself. I follow the lead of Auntie Professor Anne Paulina, and she kind of makes the point that the land is always listening and the land always wants to know your intentions. So I like to acknowledge the land herself, and I like to thank traditional custodians of the land who show us a very different way of engaging with land and understanding land and having a relationship to land. Okay, so what we were doing with this project is that we were looking at this VR game that I created over a period of 6 or 7 years, and we were looking at the effects on people's hearts when they were playing it. And so you kind of expect the heart to sound... Nope. Okay, we were not sure. No, okay, it's not going to work. So you expect your heart to sound very rhythmic, right? Boom, 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 boom. That's actually not necessarily the sound of a healthy heart, because your heart is always responding to all the inputs that are coming in from around you. You want your heart to have a certain level of variability within it. If your heart is just absolutely mechanical, with all of its intervals at the same time, you're probably in a state of either stress or you're in a state of kind of dissociation. And that's not what we want. So we see this in this kind of context that we're talking around here with this autonomic nervous system. So this is where my other training comes in, and this is the kind of work that I do with the fight or flight. So when you're really stressed and you're really angry, etc., and you're kind of pushing back. Or we can see it in the type of eco-grief that we see, where people are just kind of shut down and pushing against and just, I don't want to know. So that's also a problem. Where the magic really happens is when we're sitting in this rest and digest system, which is the parasympathetic nervous system. This is also the parasympathetic nervous system, but there's a difference between the two, and that is the absolute, I've hit the brakes, I can't cope anymore, I want this to stop. Whereas this is the space where you can do really good work and where you do regenerative work, both for yourself and for your environment. So when you get into this space, that's where you're hitting flow, and that's where the magic happens. So that's the kind of space that we want people to be in. So what we did was we tested this game that I had been building over a period of about 6 years. It's a build your own reef game, so it's kind of like Tamagotchi, SimCity, Minecraft. I think, so it kind of looks like this. You place coral, fish move in as you place your coral, you win big species, etc., and there are some bleaching events. Okay, so we were still collecting data, so that's why there's the X. It ended up, by the time I'd filtered out the people that the data was a bit wonky, etc., it ended up being 28 people, so we're still ongoing with that. We put an ECG band on them. We did a baseline activity, which was very relaxing, where they were just coloring in a mandala with pencils, and then we had them playing the game for 20 minutes. 20 minutes with that game is not a long time. You have to wrestle it off people because the average playtime is over an hour. So you're kind of having to say to them, you need to stop now. We were tracking these measures down the bottom. So this is your heart rate, this is your heart rate variability, and your high frequency is a measure of parasympathetic activation, so that's what you're really looking for. Oh, I feel like I'm rushing with 5 minutes. Okay, so between your baseline and playing the game, there was a really strong, statistically significant reduction in heart rate. That's really what we wanted to see. And I had a sense of that beforehand anyway, because people would say, I feel really relaxed and I feel really good playing this game. And it's a wonderful tool for people that maybe have mobility issues, can't get to the reef, etc. My mother would have loved this. She was bedbound. She would have absolutely loved this, okay? When it came to the heart rate variability, we were seeing a difference, but it wasn't significant. And we're still analysing the data, thank you, because what I suspect is happening is we do have bleaching events that happen throughout the game. And then we have a few other incidents as well that can happen throughout the game. So what I need to analyse now is how those situations are affecting, because what I suspect is happening is that we're getting all the good measures whilst you're building your reef, and then as soon as a bleaching event happens, you're coming out so strongly on the other side that it's skewing all of your measures. So we've got a whole bunch of things that get people's heart rates up because they get their first fish moving in, they win what we call a super coral, they get manta rays, turtles, sharks, etc. moving in. You can delete coral if you've placed something. There's strategies to the game, so if you've placed something where you don't want it, you can delete it. And the first time people delete their own coral, they get quite upset as well. So there's a whole bunch of little things in there that can cause that heart rate to come up again. Okay. So, what I'm really interested in is, first of all, there is a bit of controversy around using VR for replacing nature-based experiences. I think there can be some really good outcomes of using VR, and I think they're worth exploring. I think it's really worth exploring that polyvagal system, that kind of model, and how we respond to crises. I think that's really, really important that we get to know that a bit more. I think it's really important to sort of understand the complexity around how we're responding and how our nervous system is responding, and how very different that is to a kind of a mechanistic model of how we understand kind of linear processes that might be happening. And then I also really work in the area of inside-out sustainability. So I'm really much more interested in the inner world and what's happening on the inner world and how that translates through to the actions that we take. Thank you.